So welcome to Codative podcast. We have today our guest Donia Chaiehloudj, if I pronounce it correctly. So Donia, how are you doing?
Oh, thank you. Yeah, so let me say it again. It's Donia Chaiehloudj, but it's not easy at all to say it. But yeah, I'm doing great today. Thank you. I'm very excited.
I'm excited too to share your experience. So Donia, can you tell us what are you currently doing? What's your role and what company you work at?
So I'm currently a software engineer working at Isovalent at Cisco, and we are building a product called Cilium. It is CNI for Kubernetes. So I'm doing networking and especially working on network policy team. There is an open source product and an enterprise one also. So I'm contributing to both of them depending on the need. And I'm developing in Go. So I guess that's why I'm here today.
So I have been looking at you like at around four or more GoCons or conferences. So how was your experience there? Like I think there is a coming GopherCon that's going to be held. I don't remember around August if I'm correct. So how is it the preparation in the other things?
So I went to GopherCon two times. Um, Once in 2022 and one last year, 2024. I'm actually not planning to go this year, so I'm not preparing anything, honestly. But I can share some tips about GopherCon in general. So there is GopherCon in the US, but there are also other GopherCons around the world. There is one in EU, in Europe, there is one in Africa, there is one in Brazil, one in Singapore and Australia. So there are many around the world. And if you want to give a talk, I would recommend preparing your abstract and your talk using the resources that are provided by the guidelines of the GopherCon. There are many resources, blog posts from Dave Cheney and other people, like very good content. There are also people sharing openly their abstracts. And if you want to go there, there are several options. So either your company is sponsoring you to go there, so they are covering for you. It can be part of your training session during the year. Otherwise, you can afford it alone. And if you can't, you can apply for a diversity scholarship that I think most of the GopherCon are providing. I'm sure about the GopherCon EU and the GopherCon in the US. So this is one also option. And depending on the GopherCon, you might want to join the workshop sessions if you can. There is the Bill Kennedy ones that are very famous, John Borsico also, and there is the TinyGo hack session, which is free that you can join and hack with TinyGo on embedded uh, hardware and just play with different things. So that's a very brief overview of what you can do with GopherCon.
Interesting. I think last year GopherCon Africa has been started and it was amazing. I think it was in Kenya, I guess. Mostly GopherCon talks are very, very amazing things, especially the topics that are covered and the detail in which they go in it. They were really amazing for me, especially I have learned many things from listening to many of GopherCon talks. Uh, the one is that you have given, like about TinyGo embedded systems with Go, right? That was amazing talk, and I have learned many things about embedded systems, how to get started with it, and how to do things with Go, especially if hardware parts. But can you tell us like how you got introduced to embedded systems?
Sure. I started when I was, so I would say embedded system in general was more when I was in high school and like studying. And I have a degree in computer science in more industrial related. So I was studying electronics mostly and signals stuff. And I started playing with TinyGo bit before I applied to give this talk to GopherCon. So for the context, I gave a talk about TinyGo and using it to monitor my hen house. I had hens at the time. And it was just an idea at the beginning, like we could do that with the hen house. And it maybe just reconciliate embedded systems and Go how can I say that? But I went far away from embedded system and electronics after my studies. I just wanted to do computer science and informatics, like purely IT and software. And it was just a fun way to go back to this and play with Go and TinyGo. And so that's why. Since then, I didn't play much with TinyGo, but I'm planning to do it. It's on my to-do list. But yeah, that's one part. And there are many resources, honestly, now about TinyGo and how you can use it with various different embedded system, and even not for embedded system, like for WASM, for example. So it is more and more popular, I would say. My experience with TinyGo was fun because it was a side project, so I had no pressure in that sense. And it was more about exploring what you can do with TinyGo and how you can interact with hardware. So it's definitely very fun to do it through Go because otherwise I did it like when I was studying, but not at all with Go. So the experience was interesting also because I discovered a bug in one of the components that was monitoring the temperature and humidity. So that's not an easy thing to debug because you're trying to debug something that is running and interacting with hardware. But I got some help, and I ended up doing my first and only, I think, contribution to the TinyGo compiler at the time. So that was actually interesting for that. And one thing that I would recommend is to have a look to the videos and go to the Slack channel from the TinyGo community because it helped me a lot to interact with the people, ask for help, and there is always someone that is willing to talk about TinyGo and help you. So I would recommend that. Otherwise, there is documentation that is available and tutorials that you can actually have a look to. So yeah, that was a great experience. And I was saying that I didn't play with TinyGo for a long time now, and I hope to play again on the next project, a next fun project soon.
This is like one of the amazing topics that I've heard of Go, especially in hardware part. So let me take you back a little bit about your childhood. How was your childhood? How you have grown? How was your school experience? How was it? Can you share us your experience?
Sure. So I'm from the south of France, and I grew up with my parents there. I've been a happy and I've been a happy child, I would say. I was doing some activities, playing some music, and yeah, having fun, I would say. I loved interacting with people since I was a kid, and I'm I have most of my family in Algeria, so I have some connection there, and I was going every year to Algeria. It's part also of my culture and who I am today. And I had the chance to have my parents with me, helping me a lot, being there for me, for my studies and everything. So I had this chance. And they helped me also to find what to do because when I was a teenager, I was like a bit lost, like I guess many people, like what I'm gonna do of my life. But yeah, I had this chance to have my mom especially behind me, so that was nice. So yeah, that was mainly my childhood.
Yeah, actually, all of us feel lost when we are teenagers. Most of us do. How was like most of us don't have favorite subjects in when we were in school, and we don't think of them much. But I think they determine us how we think and how we take things. So, what was your favorite subject, and why do you love that subject?
That's a great question. I think it changed over the years, but I actually loved a lot French. I love reading and literature, which you can think was not my destiny finally, but it was something that I really enjoyed. I was actually not so much into mathematics and physics. It was not my main focus, honestly. So that's actually interesting. But I loved science in general, I would say. But I loved reading stories and books. So that was something that I really loved. And I was pretty creative also. I loved listening to music. I loved drawing and stuff like that. So it's something that I try today to keep.
Okay, another question that I have to ask you is how was like, have you been in college and how was your experience in college?
College was, I would say it was a bit difficult. It was challenging in terms of the studies. I wasn't the one that had like everything was easy. I had to work a lot to have results, and I had internships that helped me understand more what I wanted. But it was difficult from the perspective of just studying, know what I wanted concretely after. So it's something that helped me a lot to refine year by year what I wanted to do and specialize in. Otherwise, I enjoyed being a student. I was in a city in the middle of France, I would say. That was really nice. I was doing a bunch of things, honestly, and that was actually fun. I met great people there and I had a great time. But yeah, again, it was not so easy, but I'm happy I did it and I worked for that. I learned a ton of things that I'm not mainly using now, let's be honest, in my day-to-day life. But I've learned how to think, how to solve problems, like all these main things that you need after. So yeah, I would recommend for students that are listening to us um, to continue to study, to work, and find the right balance for you. Like if you are more, how to say, if you're like me and you need to work a lot, maybe you can pair with someone to work together and to get some help if needed, to find mentors and to ask your teachers if needed. So yeah, don't stay just alone in that case. Definitely.
Yeah, that's what most of us struggle with, to find a way that's work for everyone, but there is no way that everything is working for everyone. So I want to ask you, what was your first time that you got introduced to computer and programming as general?
That's a good question. So I got a computer when I was a child. I was probably 9 years old, something like that. And programming was more, I think it was the first time in high school when we were doing like physics stuff. And it was kind of programming and also in technology. But I really started to learn programming when I was in college, the first year. We were learning C on books, on papers. That was something not fun when I think about it. But yeah, that was the first time. And I think that the first time I studied, like the first semester where when I studied, I didn't really enjoy it. It was not something very interesting for me. I couldn't see like the interesting part in it, but I think mainly because it was C, because of the teacher, because of the way it was actually shared to us was not probably the best for me, at least, of course. So yeah.
Is there anything that you want to change? Maybe if you can change that experience a little bit, and that experience can help you to exceed in your career and your programming journey as you are currently working at?
Yeah, okay. What I would change, I think that when I was a student, I was not so much into tech environment and more professional environment because I was a student, and I realized that there were already many opportunities to go to conferences, even local meetups and stuff like that, that I should have. I mean, not I should, but if I redo it, I would check what's happening in tech in my local area and connect with people and technologies. And so this is something that I feel um, is something that I do differently. And maybe it would have helped me to find easily what I want to do after college because I would be more open to what exists. So this is something that I would do differently. Yeah, and that's the main thing, I think.
Okay, I think about meetups. Can you share us your experience about local meetups, especially that are based on programming languages or even developers that meet around as a local? How does that can help us to exceed in our goals, to get experience from senior developers and create an interesting network for us?
I think that you said already the main things. Going to meetups, it's a way to learn from peers, to learn from other experiences, and you can then apply maybe tips, or you're now curious about one technology that you didn't know about it, or even just a library in the language of programmation that you're interested in. It's a way to connect with people. So maybe you will create opportunity by showing up. It can be an opportunity in terms of career, because if you see people many times, once a month, for example, they will know about you. They will think about you if there is a job that is opening. They will think that you are someone that is motivated. So it's definitely something very useful on career perspective. You can also go to this meetup and actually give talks, and it's a way to build your personal branding, to learn about topics, to have more visibility, and again create other opportunities. You never know what's happening and what's gonna happen, but definitely I would recommend, if you can, when you have time, to just go to meetups, and go to meetups that are making sense for you. Don't just go to all the meetups, but go to the ones that you like the community, you feel welcome, you want to maybe involve yourself in it. So yeah, that's definitely something that I would recommend. And I really enjoy going to meetups and to organize myself some of them, and I can see the benefit for people.
Maybe can you share us one of your meetup experiences?
Sure. So I'm running a Google developer group in my local area, and we organize events all during the year. And lastly, we organized the DevFest, which is a conference slash meetup event for us. And many students joined, a lot of women also, which is not often the case, especially in Europe. And they enjoyed the talks, the topics of the talks. They told me that it was about AI and that they didn't know much about AI. And we know how important it is in our world now. So it was worth it for them. So as an organizer, I see again the benefit from the participants and the audience. And I also learned a lot because I had the chance to see the talk, attend the talks, and I learned also a lot of things about AI and how to use. It was Google products, but how AI was used also in different area. Anyway, so this is one of the experience, and most of the time it's someone talking for, I don't know, 30 minutes giving a talk, and then you enjoy networking, eating pizza or anything, and just talking and with developers or tech people in general. And, I would I like to go because it's very casual. Like there is no expectation from people. You can just show up. So that's really nice for that. I hope I answered your question.
Yeah, you answered it correctly. One of the other things is for meetups, we have there was Code Night developer meetups here in Ethiopia, and I think we have the third one this year. I've never been there, but as much as I see many of the people who are working in programming and are seniors of us are very participating there, and their network is completely based on these meetups. So I think yeah, it's good to go to meetups, especially the ones that are locals, for getting experience, for getting jobs and other things. And even conferences can make you grow much more than you thought of yourself, right? I think you said your first programming language was C, right? If I'm correct. So, can you share us how many programming languages you work with till you come to Go, and what were the reasons that you get introduced to them, and what were the use cases that used them, and which one of them is the most favorite now? I think it's definitely Go, right? But yeah.
Yeah, true. Let me think about it. So yeah, I started with C, and I think that the next one was assembler, but I mean, it was just for study. You don't actually use it then. I've been playing with more MATLAB because I was doing industrial stuff. So it was like a mix of C and like more object. I've been playing with Python when I was doing image processing, and C++ also when I was doing IT studies. And when I started working, Actually, my first experience, I was not a software developer. I was a QA engineer, and I was using mostly Bash. And then I moved to the team that was using Go for the software that I was testing. That's how I began to be a Go developer. And I left Go for a year doing Java, and for different reasons, but not mainly the language, I left this job and went back to Go. And since a few years now, I've been doing Go. So I started in 2017, and here I am, almost 7 years later. So yeah, and I love Go for its simplicity, definitely, and its versatility, and all the stuff that I can do with it. But I'm very happy because this is one of the main language in the cloud native area, what I'm working on now. Almost all the open source projects are in Go, like Kubernetes, Docker, all this tooling around, all the toolings around are in Go. And I mean, that's why Google created it. So more for infrastructure and services. So yeah, so I'm happy that I'm now a Gopher, definitely.
It's amazing to have experience with many languages, especially when you are language dependent person, like you are not becoming an engineer, right? How can you describe like this kind of phenomenon that's currently happening now? People becoming just dependent on a language and not thinking that any language is capable of doing anything with your stuff and what they want to do with it. So how can you describe this kind of things, especially when you are becoming completely dependent on the language and you don't have the problem solving ability and basic engineering abilities to solve problems, especially real world problems, and you become just dependent on the language?
That's actually a good question. Yeah, I don't know. Actually, so as I said, I'm a Go developer, so I have a specialty in Go. That's my main language. But at the same time, I feel I don't know, if I'm exploring AI topics, maybe I would use Python because it's the most used language for that, for data and etc. I'm not like not open, It's just because I'm doing stuff that require more knowledge. But if I wanted to explore other topics, I would go for another language. But when you are coding every day with a language, you'd be rather liking it. That's what I'm thinking about. So yeah, I think that you should still be open and adapt the tool that you need depending on your problems and that you're trying to solve, or actually the product that you're working on.
That's the basic point of being an engineer, right? To have specialty on something. Yeah. So how was your experience on working or getting a job as an engineer first time? Were you working on lead code kind of questions, or how was your preparation and how you got to engineering works?
Yeah, I'm gonna speak in general, not my first interviews, but interviews in general. So I've been using lead code to prepare to like the coding very basic interviews. Yeah, mainly lead code, I think. I think it's great. Like you can learn and apply, and it's not that you don't know the concepts, but it's just to get familiar again with it, because in my day-to-day job, I was building microservices and application. I was not doing all these problems in my life. So I was like, I need to remind myself and just make sure if I see a problem during the interview, I know to which kind of problems I've seen is and what is the solution that is appropriate. I've also prepared myself to architecture interviews and design systems, because I think that they are, on my point of view, they are the most difficult ones. They can be very broad. You need a lot of knowledge and very vast about systems, how they work, what are the best solutions, and you also need to train to speak as you're coding or showing something. And this is something that is kind of difficult because we are not doing it when we are working or studying. We are thinking in our head, typing code and stuff like that, or throwing on a paper, but you're not talking at the same time that you're thinking and solving a problem. And it's a skill that is demanding some training, I feel. So I had friends doing fake interviews with me so I can actually practice. And Another thing is to work on the way you communicate in general when you are presenting yourself, when you're answering managerial questions and cultural questions. It's very important to be clear on who you are, what you want, that you researching about the company, what are the culture, if you're fitting or not. All this not technical stuff, but that can make the difference between two persons that are technical. So this is the way I was preparing for interviews. I didn't have interviews in a long time now, but yeah, that's the way I would do it.
Amazing to have this kind of experience to start as a junior and to get to senior positions. I think the interviews are varying, right, for a junior developer and for a senior developer.
Yes and no. I would say that the level that is expected is different, but the way they're judging people is the same most of the time.
Can you elaborate on it more, especially how the evaluation things are done?
I think that the kind of problem that they're going to give you or can be the same, but for example, I don't know, you are solving a concrete problem that they have in their companies, the company that you're applying for. If you are a senior, they would expect you to have a deeper thinking about the problem, like how are you going to test it? Is it going to be performant? How are you going to put it to scale? Like this kind of question that maybe a junior wouldn't ask or wouldn't think about because you've never been like in the real production world, so you don't know about it. So they would not expect something like that from you. But if you are a senior, they would expect some experience and they would expect you to do more testing, to think about more use cases and have more a big picture vision of the problem they're showing you. I hope it's clear.
Yeah, it was an interesting answer. What about unique things that you really admire in Go, that you think Go has got it more than any programming language that you were experienced with, and it's the very interesting thing that you have in Go?
That's actually a good question. I would say that something that was missing in Go and we have now and we don't know what to do about is generics. So when I was doing Java, I realized that you have some built-in function already here from the standard library that you don't have to think about. And in Go, you would have to rewrite them. And with generics, it was this promise that you would have them and you could implement them directly. But I feel like I saw that in Slack channel in my company, like people just saying like, we miss Go without generics because people are doing like a bunch of things that are not making sense all the time with generics. So that's the right balance to find. It's something unique, I feel, because in Python also you have many built-in functions to find keys in map. I don't know, stuff that you cannot do easily in Go. At least it's not straightforward. But at the same time, like when you're coding every day with Go, I don't feel it's kind of annoying. I don't know. I've just been used to, so that's okay. Another thing that can be a bit unique and boring, I'm not sure I admire it, so I'm not sure answering your question. I'm just throwing stuff about Go, but it's the error value. This is something that I really like. I really enjoy the way that errors are valued in Go, but how we need to, like the fact that we need to check them all the time and catch them, it can be redundant and not so easy to read when you're reading code. There is also a proposition to do it like in a way with a question mark in the Go community, but yeah, I don't know how it's gonna be. Yeah, we'll see.
Yeah, I was much more of experienced with Python, and as much as I know in other programming languages, when an error occurs, the programming language just catches the error, then an exception occurs, and your program just stop execution. But in Go, you have to handle every value, and I think it may also create program overload when it runs, especially when you have many errors that are built up on this. So what kind of things do you recommend, like for a beginner developer to solve or handle this kind of errors, even as a general, to have a very high way of designing your system and designing the systems that you are coding at? Is there anything that you recommend as a Go developer?
Do you mean regarding the errors precisely, how to handle errors?
Yeah, according, yeah,
Yeah.
it may be handling errors and other stuffs also.
Okay, let's focus on errors. So what I would say is that you should return errors when it's needed. For example, I was checking code with my husband, which is now a Go developer too, and he was showing me like, here we don't need an error because after we're not wrapping it and not using it, it was just to check if it was nil or not. In that case, you can just use a Boolean, you know. It can be obvious, but sometime in code, you would see like, especially in code that has past, you could see some behavior like that. So just ask yourself if an error is really needed here. And if it's needed, who is going to see this error? How it's going to be checked? Like at the end, it should be readable, it should be usable. Like the final user seeing this error should understand how to solve his problem when seeing this error, or actually understand how the system is acting. Another thing is do not hesitate to create error types that are custom if you need them when you want to check if you have a marshalling problem, if you have anything that is also related to your code and to the domain of your code. It can be really useful to return the proper error to your user after, depending on the type of error that you have. In general, wrap your errors. That's something very basic, but that's it.
Okay, what about other things like designing your system when you are coding? I think most of us just use functions and structs and other things, but the way that we use it is most of it is not correct and just we use it as a basic level. So what do you think we have to improve when we do programming as a general to have more readable code, more robust code in which we can extend it much more far to add new features and integrate it with other systems too?
That's a very good question. I would go with different axes. I would say if we are talking only about the code, organize your code properly by packages and have related domains in the different packages. It's again, something very basic, but it's when it's easy to navigate in your code, it's easier to understand, to also to maintain and add new feature whenever you want. So have the right packages and do not hesitate to refactor if you feel that you have too much code in this file. Maybe it should be another package that is separated. Do it. Another thing about organization of code, have you should have proper namings. There is a one link we could add it if you want to from the Go Dev blog, and there is like basic guidelines about package and namings and also file namings, etc. So you should follow that. It's very useful. And it sets a standard that if you're navigating between this Go code and another Go base code, you will find the similarities. So you get familiar with it. Regarding the function, as you mentioned, if you have a function that is doing many, many things, it's not one function. You should be able to split it in different functions. One function can be synthesized in one sentence, for example, and document your code. It's very important. I mean, the code should be self-documented. Some people say that, but at the same time, sometimes it's a bit more complicated or it can be a bit tricky. So do not hesitate to add documentation. And one other thing about best practices in general, have a README in your repo. In your project, you should have a makefile. Makefile is very useful to have all the basic comments. You should have linters to format your file, imports, and all this stuff. There are linters that are checking that I don't know, you're returning an error, but you don't have any error, or stuff like that, or that are more behavioral. So do not hesitate to use all these things. This is very basic, but when you combine all these things together, it will be much easier to navigate and, as you say, creating features and especially fixing bugs. That is part of the job.
Interesting. Most of the tools that you mentioned, especially linters, debuggers, and kind of things, we don't use them much more often. We just do the code and then we don't want like it just works and just we leave it most of the time. We have this a huge function in one place of our code and then we leave everything for that function. It's a magic function and does everything and give us the output. So that's very important thing to notice as a program as a general. What about open source projects? how can we get inspired and do open source projects that are very interesting to us, not thinking of other persons to use your code is makes it much more non-doable most of the time because you don't know what's the interest of others. But how can we get the problems that we really want to solve and we get to finish this project?
That's a good question. I'm not sure I have the answer, honestly. I know that I have one of my friend, David Calver. He built a project around Grafana dashboards that is open source and people are using them. So I would say that if you're solving a problem that you faced, probably that others are facing the same problem. So if you open source it, it will be available to people. And after you can spread the word, actually, this friend shared an article about it, and people got interested by the project, etc., etc., and then got more visibility, and people are contributing to his project. So I would start with solving one problem that you are facing. So the goal is not to creating an open source project, but more if you're facing something, you might want to open source it. That's more the logic. Otherwise, you can contribute to existing open source projects by checking projects that might be interesting for you. I don't know if you're in cloud native, there are many of them, for example. If you're interested by linters, there are linters in Go. And you can check the issues. You can take one of the good first issue. Most of the time there is a label for that. And you can ask in the comment if you can be assigned and start working on it. And then you go. So that's a way also to contribute to open source. I feel it's very valuable, as you said, honestly, because you are contributing to something that is actually used by people. And at the same time, it's very frightening to add code to that kind of base code that are actually used. So, but very interesting. And also the open source community is pretty amazing. They're very open. They are always here to help. You're welcome to contribute to projects. Most of the time, like people are very, very happy that you're helping them to build this kind of projects. So do not hesitate if you find an issue, but you don't know where to start, that you want some guidance, and people would be probably very happy to help. Always be kind and respectful. That's the main thing.
The open source community is one of the interesting communities that's around programming. I think many of open source projects are now becoming premium projects, like closed source projects, by just taking the code and then adapting it to some specific thing, right? But one of the other problems I think we face as a programmers is not finishing a project that we start, right? So how to overcome that kind of problems and start a project and finish it completely, and we try to have finalizing it.
That's a very generic question in general, I would say. When you're starting something, how do you finish it? I'm not the best one for that to ask, honestly, but I would say that if you have little tasks to focus on, it's easier. So just split what are the rest to do, what is the rest to actually accomplish to finish your project, and do it little by little. Otherwise, you can also ask for help, maybe from a friend or a colleague or a teammate to get some help to finish that, or to have just feedback, on what's good, what's not, and what maybe like to find the right direction to go to finalize your project. And yeah, I don't have honestly many tips about that.
Yeah, I think most of us have personal way of finishing things. That's why maybe it may be different from person to person. Let me take you back to your career that you are currently working at. So can you describe what are the things that you are working at now at Isovalent? I think the company is Isovalent, right? What are the things that you are working at, and what's the domain of that work that you are contributing currently?
So I'm working at Isovalent at Cisco. So Isovalent was a startup that has been acquired by Cisco, and we are doing networking security in the cloud, in Kubernetes, and also on-prem, I would say, in a way. And what are we doing is managing network policy in a cloud. So for the one that are not familiar with network policy, it's the way that you are expressing how the resources are communicating between them. For example, if you have a system with a front end and a back end, only front end can communicate with back end. If you're an external resource, you cannot access directly the back end for security reasons, of course. So what I'm doing is working on this network policy side. You can express them by writing YAML, saying this resource can communicate in ingress or egress traffic with all these resources. And behind the scene, what's happening is that the tool that we are building, Cilium, is taking all these policies and applying them dynamically on a cluster Kubernetes and if the traffic is rejected or if it's accepted, it will forward or not all the packets to the right directions. A thing that is interesting about this project is that we are using a technology called eBPF, and basically it's a technology in the Linux kernel that is helping to run custom program live dynamically on the kernel to reprogram it. So it's very interesting and very powerful because it helps to be more efficient on the traffic side. So all the packets are forwarded much more faster than using the traditional IP table rules. And it's also very powerful for the way that we're expressing and running it with Go because we can embed all these programs with the Go code. And all Cilium is written in Go. The project, as I mentioned, Cilium is open source. If you want to contribute, you're more than welcome. And what I'm working on is this network policy side. I've been working on testing different aspects of it, and currently I'm working on a project that I cannot talk about because it's for customers. So I'm sorry about that. So yeah. But yeah, and I hope actually the next thing that I'm gonna work on, I hope, is to improve the testing part on the Cilium rules, the way we are expressing this network policy, because we have many combinations that are possible. And the way that we are testing it, we are not testing all the layers of the code, but only like big parts. And we want to divide a little bit to make sure we are going through all the paths.
Fantastic how much Go is capable of doing. Let us go to your community contributions. Public talks. I know you by public talks mostly, and recently your book that you co-authored with other authors. So can you give us what's that book about and what can help us, what can help we get from that book and what's interesting about the book? If you have, maybe introduce us to the book if you have it currently.
Sure. So we are co-writing a book. We had co-writing a book with Pascal Bertrand and Aliénor Latour. They are two friends and two ex-colleagues from previous experience. And this book is named Learn Go with Pocket Size Project. This is a book that is aiming to teach Go for software developers or beginners, software developers that want to move to Go. Otherwise, if you're just a beginner, but with basics about programmation, like we're not going to teach you how to program, but more about the language itself. And the specificity of this book is that each chapter is one project, and you're going to build a little project for each of these chapters. It's incremental in terms of difficulty, I would say. And there are 12 chapters. The first one is the introduction, and then there are 11 projects. The goal is really to teach you Go, but in a fun way. So you are building something that is fun. This is mostly games or maybe something that is useful, like a logger or a cache with generics, but always in a fun way to actually learn the concepts behind Go and also about programming in general. So we mentioned during this conversation some topics about best practices, and this is something that you can learn from the book also. So we are trying to bring value to developers around Go and programming in general from our experiences. This book is available online. You can buy it online and it will be published very, very soon. So we are very exciting. We are very excited about that. It was a very great experience. We are very excited to get feedback from people learning about the book and like how maybe change their experience with Go or their career, just to have feedback and stories with this book. It was a lot of work, but we are happy that we done it. I don't think we will write a book again. It was an incredible experience, but a lot of energy and work. But that's why we are very excited to get feedback from people.
Amazing. Is there any other books that have made impacts on your life or your programming life and other things that you recommend others also to read it? It can be any kind of book, maybe technical, non-technical, or self-help books, or any other thing of books.
That's very interesting. There is other Go book actually that I would recommend. There is the one from Marianne Montagno, which is Building CLI. I think that with Go, this is a book that is covering how to build a user-friendly CLI in Go. And actually, it's very interesting because as a developer, especially a backend developer, we don't think about UX and UI, more UX, I would say. She brought that into her book and how to build the right flags, the right options, all the things that make a great software in front, like the front, I would say, of the CLI. So I would recommend this one. And the other one is from Adelina Simeon, which is test-driven development in Go. Testing in Go, and it covers a lot of the testing aspects, almost all the aspects of testing in Go, from the unit test to the test-driven testing to end-to-end test, like all the testing aspects are covered, and it has a great value because testing is very important in software. And this is the two books that I would recommend. They're my go-to.
Amazing books. I think I didn't heard both of them till now. Maybe I will try to look at them and get the books. So other things to ask is what kind of advice do you give for a community that's growing and is being established now to have a great connection and to be the kind of Go community that we have around the world?
That's a very good question. I'm still experiencing on honestly experimenting with the community that I'm building here. I find it really hard to engage with people and have people being there. I think that finding and proposing topics with great value that are trendy, that are useful, that is important, or people that can bring value, of course. Another thing that I would recommend is being consistent, which I'm not in my own community. So this is very hard. That's a lot of energy. So I would recommend to team up with people. Don't be alone. We are actually four and we are struggling. So it's important to have people around you to build a community, be a team of core people and people who knows why they are doing it. It's very important. And build a community, even there are not a lot of people that are truly interested in what you're sharing and wants to engage and learn. That's very important. And also open the community to other communities. Like it's very nice to team up with other communities. Like, I don't know, if you're doing Go and Cloud meetup, it can be very interesting to team up with CNCF meetup, for example. I don't know. So you're merging these communities and building topics that has a lot of value for both of the communities. So this is another aspect. Another thing is to open the community also and the scene, the stage to the community if they want to come and talk. And this is a way also to give them value and reward them in a sense that we're trusting you to come and share topics. So that's very important. And yeah, don't hesitate to ask also for help. That's very important in general to your own community.
Amazing. What about like exceeding in career and getting remote jobs, especially for us? It's not too easy to get in-person jobs in Go, especially. So how to get remote jobs and how to be productive with it, because it's hard to be productive when you are working remotely. I think that's my idea basically. So how to get disciplined while you remote work and get remote works also.
So the first question was how to get remote jobs. There are many platforms to find remote jobs, and in Go, I think that's more difficult when you're a junior to get a remote job because you don't have any experience, and learning from peers when you're working with them in the same environment, it can be very useful. If you don't find a remote job as a junior, don't be worried. Just find a job. Continue to do Go in your side projects and contribute to open source and stuff, even though you don't find like a Go job in your area. Just program, get experience more and more so you can apply time to times to remote Go jobs. I would definitely recommend that. Another aspect is some companies are sponsoring people to move from that country to other countries to do Go jobs, so in person. So it can be also an option, of course. And again, there are many platforms for Go. You can also join the Slack channel again from the Gopher Academy. Then there are jobs channel, so don't hesitate to do that, to follow Go groups on LinkedIn, Twitter, and stuff like that. People are sharing, like, most of the time they are sharing if there are job opportunities. And if there are some companies that you really like, don't hesitate also to just check their website sometimes, very basic, but again. And there are like the CNCF job board also, where there are a lot of jobs. And because most of the projects are written in Go, you can find Go software developer opportunities there. So the CNCF job board. So this is for the remote part. But yeah, to get discipline, to answer this question, I would say that keeping motivation about the work that you're doing is important. Another thing is to find the right balance. So working, but also taking time for you, doing some activities, breathing some air, meeting other people outside of work, or getting coffee chat with your teammates to bond with them. It's also an option. But yeah, that's mainly what I would recommend and what I try to apply to myself.
Fantastic how you were working. I think your company that you're currently working at, Isovalent, is completely remote, right?
Yes, I have offices now near where I live in the south of France from Cisco, and I go sometimes. So yeah, but otherwise I'm remote.
Okay, yeah. Another thing is that, like, here, and I think it's all around the coding community or programming community, that there are no many women that we see. Many of them are unique, like you. How to get, what is sort of advice do you have for women to code, especially for girls that are teenagers currently, to start coding and execute it, because there are many responsibilities on them and other things. So how to balance these things and be a good programmer, especially. But yeah, how to be a good programmer and learn it well.
Yeah, okay. So what I would recommend is, in general, get your hands dirty. This is how I work. I like to experiment by myself. This is where I'm the most productive, but also where I understand the most. Like, reading a blog post is not enough for me to understand truly what it means when I'm actually programming. So, for example, the TinyGo project, it's because I've been working on it, working with it, building something that I actually understand how it works. And it's the same for other things in general. So again, this is how I work. This is how I learn. But you have to find the way that you learn the best, and it's by experimenting different ways. Maybe a book, maybe a tutorial, maybe a video, maybe a LinkedIn course. I don't know, whatever is the best for you. But I would say that keep learning and keep experimenting to find the best way for you to learn and to progress. Again, don't hesitate to team up with people, like to find a bunch of women if you're a woman and you want to team up and just build something together or have feedback on what you're doing. Do not hesitate to do that. I actually participated in a hackathon last year, and it was my first hackathon ever, with my cousin, my little cousin. She's also a software engineer. She's actually a junior. And it was a great way for me to, again, get my hand dirty and just understand more what I was doing and AI topics. So it's not about being a junior, it's just in general, learning by doing is the right way for me to go. So this is one of my recommendation, and also being surrounded by mentors. So it can be managers, it can be colleagues, peers. It doesn't have to be older people than you. It can be people that you're studying with, but that are maybe, I don't know, they know more about a topic than you, and you can bring value on a topic. So you are teaming up, and it's also mentoring in peers to peers mentoring. So this is something that I would recommend. Definitely. Yeah. I think that's all my suggestion.
Okay, thanks Donia to be our guest and for your amazing suggestions and advices. So thanks.
Thank you
Okay,
a lot for your time.
final thing. Have you ever spoken Amharic?
No.
Okay, I want to teach you one or two words if you are willing.
Yeah. Yeah, sure.
Okay, okay, so to say bye in Amharic,
Salam
salam.
hunu.
Can you say it? Yeah, so thanks, Donia.
Thank you. Salam hunu.